Hello friends and welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about the pros and cons of some big K-pop companies. But first, I must address, yes, I'm wrapped in a blanket. Hear me out. I was just outside. There's literally ice on the ground and it's like roughly 25 degrees. And in spite of the fact I went to college on the East Coast and survived multiple East Coast winters, I don't do cold. So I'm freezing. So we're going to be in a blanket for chunks of this video and I think we all just need to come to terms with that. Anyway, here's the deal. So I was on Twitter the other day, because I'm always on Twitter, and I saw this tweet that it was like, if you got into every K-pop company you auditioned for, like, all of them, which one would you sign to and why? And I saw that tweet. I'm gonna see if I can find it. If I can find the tweet, I'll, like, link it in the description, but I don't even know if I liked the tweet itself, and I like a lot of tweets. So, like, I might not be able to find it, but I'll look. I'll do a cursory glance through my likes to see if I can find it. Either way, though, I saw the tweet and I was like, that is fascinating to think about. And then I was thinking about it for like a good 10 to 15 minutes. And here we are. I decided to make a video about it. I have several notes to get through before we actually begin. Really just the disclaimer. Disclaimer number one, I just picked the big companies based off like common sense. Like I picked the SMs of the world. They're all on this list. So like there's that. I did pick some of the faves, like their companies. So they're also going to be on here. But for the most part, it's all like the logical biggies. Disclaimer number two, I'm well aware that I'm 24, not the most cute bitch, and I can't sing or dance. We know this is make-believe, so on the off chance that I offend you by saying something about your fave's company, you do not have to tell me that I am delusional. I am well aware of this fact. Disclaimer number three, for the purposes of this video and taking these notes, I assumed I'm debuting tomorrow. Because, like, yes, I know, the trainee system exists. It's a whole thing. I obviously would not debut tomorrow even if I got into this company today. That's not really, like, I can't see in the future. I just can't. I can talk about today's environment, so that's what I did. We're assuming we're debuting tomorrow. Disclaimer number four, this is all just for fun. It's for funsies. It's not that deep. Cool. So, we're going to start with, like, the big biggies, and up first we have HYBE. Now, I just did the whole HYBE collective with the sole exception of Pledis, because Pledis is going to be their own thing. They're going to be later on the list, but, like, this is all the companies that HYBE owns other than Pledis. Let's start off with the pros. Pro number one. There's like a 1,000,000 to 1 chance that I will be successful. Like, the lowest selling HYBE album released in the 2020s has sold like hundreds of thousands of copies. Additionally, if I'm in a HYBE girl group, I'm releasing chart-topping hits. Like, it's just gonna happen. And if I'm not in a HYBE girl group and I'm in a HYBE boy group, I'm selling millions of albums. So, like, either way, I'm gonna be rich. Pro number two, they seem to give their artists a bit more creative control. Like, you obviously do not have 100% creative control starting off, but they do seem to give you a bit more flexibility if you want it, and I appreciate that. Pro number three is literally just a pro for me, but that is that as far as I am aware, they have never worked with Ryan Jung. And for those who don't know, I have a deep-seated vendetta against that man for his sheer lack of consistent quality. So, the fact they have, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, I did not go through either Ryan Jung's entire production history or just all of the HYBE discography. I wasn't going to do that for this, but, like, to my knowledge, they've never worked with him. As for the cons, con number one, I've hated the majority of HYBE releases of the past, like, 18 months, which, like, there's a handful of exceptions. There are a handful of HYBE titles that I like, but for the most part of the 2020s, they have not been for me, which means I'd probably end up hating any song that I released, which isn't the most ideal. Con number two is a little more complicated, to say the least, so, like, try and stick with me, okay? Their use of sub-labels at HYBE concerns me greatly. Like, I have a business degree. My degree is specifically in accounting, but, like, business administration is technically what is printed on my degree. And their use of sub-labels to me, with my education, very much gives me the vibes of, like, they're planning on selling them off one day. Like, I do not believe that if HYBE really wanted to have this, like, a massive network, like, they could do it like SM. Because SM has all their artists under one label, like a normal entertainment company. Their use of sub-labels to me very much gives me the vibes that, like, one day, Bang Shihyuk is going to be like, I'm ready to retire, I want a massive influx of money, let's sell off New Jeans' company. And they're going to sell off New Jeans' company to, like, Lowen or something. And then all of a sudden, New Jeans is no longer under HYBE. Like, for me, that is a con, because if I sign a contract with a company, I don't want to have to worry about the company that I'm contracted with being sold from the main company to, like, another company. So, like, that's a con for me. Either way though, next company we're going to talk about is going to be SM Entertainment. And per number one, just like with HYBE, I will not be flopping. Like, I'm sorry. I went back in my brain trying to think of like the floppest SM Korean group. And I went back to the debut of Girls' Generation. None of them flopped. Like, every SM girl group since Girls' Generation has charted a number one song. Every single boy group has sold well over 1 million albums at this point. Like, if you debut under SM Entertainment, you're not gonna flop. Pro number two. When I get a solo debut, I will have just the most creative control. I don't know if they actually still do it like this, but I remember like my time as a deep SM stan, SM soloists pretty much have like full control over their solo. Like, they let Jonghyun write pretty much all his own songs. They let Key do all his own outfits. Like, to my knowledge, SM soloists are getting a very long leash in terms of their creative control, and I really like that. Pro number three is another personal one. I'd be label mates with SHINee. If you know anything about me, you'll know that's a pro. Now it's going to be some cons. So con number one, I don't want to be another NCT member. Not that there's anything wrong with being an NCT member, but like, I truly believe it's going to be a while before we get a brand new SM boy group that's not just some form of NCT. And again, nothing wrong with being an NCT member. However, I would rather be like my own entity instead of just one of a seemingly endless number of members of this gigantic boy group. Con number two is that I die of exhaustion. That kind of goes without saying for all of these. Like, I am not built for the life of a K-pop idol. I will pass out in the streets by like week 2. However, SM, again, in my time as an SM stan, SM is notorious for working their idols like to the bone. And I would die. I would die of exhaustion. I'm not built for it. Moving on, next up is JYP, and as always, pro number one is guaranteed success. To be fair, JYP I feel like has like the worst track record when it comes to guaranteed success, because for the other big companies, it's like their successful artists are all like massively successful. Not that JYP's successful artists aren't also massively successful, but like I can name some JYP artists that aren't on that level. So like it's a less guaranteed level of success. However, I would absolutely still be rich. Pro number two is that JYP actually has like a very wide variety of sounds in their label. Like, for example, you could be in a more hip-hop group like Stray Kids. You can be in a dance group. You can be in a ballad group. You can be in a band. Like, JYP, as opposed to a lot of the other companies on this list, JYP has the most variety to me in terms of the sounds they produce, and I really like that. As for the cons, con number one, JYP would be my boss. I would have to deal with that man. I would have to interact with that man. And that man makes me violently ill and just plain violent. Con number two, JYP just sucks at promoting multiple groups at a time. Specifically boy groups, but also like groups of the same gender. They're the worst at it. And I'd rather not piss off the stays going in, because like when they release the next idol boy group, I'm calling it now, when JYP releases their next like Korean idol boy group, Stray Kids is going to disappear from the public eye. I'm calling it now, and I would rather not angry the stays, because odds are going in, they're going to be a pretty sizable demographic of my fan base. We have reached the final, like, big company, which is YG Entertainment. And for the final time, I will be telling you that pro number one is guaranteed success, but to, like, the umpteenth degree, like, to the HYBE level of a degree. I feel like HYBE's debut era success now is really only comparable to YG, like, from 2009 to 2016, really, because prior to Treasure, like, from 21 through Blackpink, every YG group debut, and also EHY's debut, topped charts, won on music shows, was a hit. Like, YG didn't release a not-hit debut for years and years and years. So, like, granted, Treasure did not do that. Treasure had the by far least successful debut of a YG group. However, they still are quite popular. So, like, no matter what, I will be popular and I will be rich. Pro number two is once more creative control. Since I am a man, I don't know if you noticed, I probably wouldn't be making it into a girl group, which means I wouldn't be under the grip of Mr. Teddy Park. Like, Teddy runs YG Women. We know this. Like, he runs their girl groups. He ran 21's music. He runs Blackpink's music. Teddy does the girl groups. But, like, YG boy groups have very long leashes when it comes to creative control, going all the way back to Big Bang. Like, Big Bang, iKON, and Winner are all really heavily, like, member influenced when it comes to their music. And that's something that, in case you hadn't noticed, is very important to me. Pro number three is definitely more of a personal one, which is that, as we previously mentioned, I can't sing. I am not a singer. I cannot sing for my life. However, I consider myself, like, a relatively decent rapper. Granted, it's not hard to be a good rapper, but like, I consider myself a pretty good rapper. And YG is known for the rapper, so that can't hurt either. Con time. Con number one is that YG is truly the worst when it comes to promotional schedules. Like, there will be year-long periods when I really should be having comebacks if I'm under YG that I just won't. And that's not great for me. Like, yeah, what I do release will do well. It will happen once a blue moon. Like, YG is the worst at actually promoting their artists. Just look at Blackpink. If you look at Blackpink's catalog and you compare it to, like, groups like Twice or Red Velvet, like, Blackpink in their entire many-year-long career has roughly the same number of songs that, like, Twice or Red Velvet put out in, like, a year or two. So, like, that's definitely not the best case scenario for me as one comeback every other year. Con number two, YG sucks at media relations. Like, part of it is probably my just existential trauma that I got into 2NE1 in 2015, I would say validly expecting a comeback at some point. Yeah, no, never happened, never really was a thing. So, like, there's that. Like, the Park Bom thing, just terrible. Like, their solution to her was literally just, yeah, we're just gonna end 2NE1. 2NE1's gonna end now. It's been fun. Bye. So, like, there's that. But also, even recently, like, the Tae and Jennie thing, YG did a terrible job with that. So, like, all around kind of flop at the media relations department. Okay, we have finished the big biggies. We're going to move on to the, like, mid-sized companies. And starting us off is going to be the previously mentioned Pledis Entertainment. Pro number one is that if 17 is anything to go by, I would have just massive levels of creative control. Like, especially debut era 17, they were making their own songs. They were producing their own songs. They were choreographing their own things. Like, they were doing the most. And like, we've already said it, but, like, that's very important to me. I feel like artists should at least have the option of creative control. Pro number two, with, like, one or two exceptions, pretty much every Pledis title, going back a good few years, has been quite good when it comes to, like, song quality. Like, they've, for the most part, all been great, especially Pledis debuts. To my knowledge, I don't think there's a bad Pledis debut, although I did not re-listen to After School's debut for this video, so I could be wrong on that one, but, like, definitely in the 2010s, every Pledis debut has been absolutely slay, and I would love some slay music starting off. Pro number three, another personal one, I just want to hang out with 17. Like, there specifically, I have certain members, I will not be naming them, but there are certain members I want to get, like, annihilated levels of high with, like, just smoke the endless amounts of joints that it would take to get me to, like, that truly deeply fucked up level. I have certain members I want to do that with in 17, and I feel like that would be really fun. As for the cons, con number one does not apply to me personally, but does apply, statistically speaking, to around 50% of humanity, which is that they are the worst at handling female artists. Like, who remembers when Monse was supposed to be an after-school comeback? Who remembers when Pristine disbanded for no damn reason after being quite popular? Like, yes, we have From Us now, but I have great fear when it comes to From Us. Like, they've been doing good so far, but I do not trust them. So, like, yeah, that's definitely a con for me. Con number two is that they're owned by HYBE, and this might sound weird, but if you bring it back to my HYBE thing with their sub-labels and me just being absolutely convinced that one day HYBE's gonna run, like, not run out of money, but, like, be running low on funds and decide to sell off a sub-label, yeah, that's a con. Next up, we have what I would consider the most successful of the mid-sized companies in 2022, which is Starship. And right off the bat, pro number one, IVE is just so immensely popular that I feel like if Starship were to debut a boy group in 2023, which they absolutely should for the record, like, business standpoint, absolutely please debut another boy group, because IVE is so popular right now that if they put out a boy group in 2023, that boy group is going to have so many eyes on it going in that it's going to do well. I couldn't really think of another pro for Starship. So we're going to move on to the cons, and right off the bat, I have to say, like, I mean this with no ill will, but Starship boy group titles kind of suck. Like, there have been a handful in the past couple years that I've liked, but it's really only a handful, which means I'd almost certainly end up hating my own music, and that's not ideal for me. Con number two is that Starship, to me, has this terrible tendency of just ignoring their less successful artists, even if like a comeback makes logical sense. And even if they are still moderately successful, like if you look at the difference between a Monster X promotional cycle, like the number of comebacks they have a year, especially when they were starting out, and compare that to Gravity, it's nuts. But Monster X sells more albums, so Monster X gets to have the comebacks. Similarly, Ivan Cosmic Girls, like, I get it, right? I get it. Money's important. And especially for Ivan Cosmic Girls, like, Ivan's still starting out, even if they are massively popular. So, like, you do want to establish them. However, we should have had more than one Cosmic Girls comeback when they just won Queendom. Like, you really should have been pushing them more Starship. So, like, it would just worry me if I were to sign with them that if I were not to be successful, they would probably lock me in the dungeons. Next up, we have Cube, and right off the bat, pro number 1 is going to be the reverse of what I was just talking about, which is that Cube does not give up on their flops. Look at how many albums CLC had, and I know, we love CLC in this house, or at least we love some of their titles, but like, CLC was a flop, and yet they have so many albums, so like, Cube really does not give up on you, and I respect that. Pro number 2 is just that Cube boy group titles pretty much all slay, or at least they're all good, and a lot of them slay. So, like, that's a win for me. We've established I love some slay music. I would love some slay titles. Pro number 3 and con number 1 are sort of a double-edged sword, so I'm doing them together, which is that, less so now, like, with Giddle in particular, and also Lightsome, but, like, for older Cube groups like BTOB, Pentagon, and CLC, when you're starting out, you are coming back constantly. Like, you are releasing 3 albums a year easy. And on the one hand, that's a pro to me, because it's like, you will constantly be on people's minds. Like, if you're always releasing shit, people are always seeing you on music shows and they're always going to be thinking about you. But on the other hand, I'd be exhausted. Again, I'm not built for that. I cannot do constant promotions like that. I would die. Con number 2 is sort of a continuation of what I was just saying, which is that once you do actually build up a fan base, you pretty much only come back once a year. Like, Pentagon and BTOB in particular had one comeback this year, in spite of the fact that they both did decently well. BTOB in particular did pretty well, I would say, and yet they only had the one comeback, which, like, I get that they wanted to focus on Giddle because they're making a lot of money off of Giddle right now, but at the same time, it's like you could have given Pentagon or BTOB another comeback later in the year. Last but not least for this video is going to be Fantagio, because I'm an Astro stan. Speaking of which, pro number 1. Diehard Astro stan. Being label mates with Astro just sounds like a dream come true to me. I would love to hang out with Moonbin in my spare time. Like, I love Astro. I would love to be their label mates. Pro number 2, Fantagio has phenomenal acting connections, and true fact about Simon was a child actor, not actually like in reality, but like I used to love doing the school plays at my school, and like I loved acting, so like hypothetically speaking, once I'm like old and haggard and also again can't sing, I can just become an actor. Pro number 3 is that Fantagio's only boy group is Astro, and Astro's about to go on hiatus for their military service, which means I would be getting a lot of attention, and that would be great for me. As for my cons, con number 1, sometimes they suck at managing their artists because, for example, Weki Meki is where exactly? Astro had one comeback this year for what reason exactly? Yeah. Con number 2, again, it's the traumatized Astro stan in me, but if one member from my group gets very popular, no one will look at me. No one will think about me. I will be getting no love and attention until, like, they have worked that member to death. Because, like, again, it's the traumatized Astro stan in me, but, like, if one of the members of my group were to be a Chaonu, and I would say a Jinu, I'm fucked. Anyway, yeah, I will say for the record, this was very fun to make, so there may or may not be more parts coming. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to comment your own thoughts on my pros and cons down below. Let me know your pros and cons for the companies that I said. Let me know what companies I should, hypothetically speaking, do if I were to do a part 2. Let me know all that in the comments. You can also like and subscribe if you want to or don't. I will be okay either way. And you can follow me on Twitter at @s_reviews if you want to hear more from me. I will link that in the description. And yeah, thank you again for watching. Bye!